look at all of the labor and how much do these guys make an hour, right? It's 20, $30. So it's real easy sometimes to get people's attention because they just don't realize it. If you walk out on a shop floor and you just see people being busy, they're moving, machines are running, their spindles are cutting chips. So the belief is that we're making money. Well, you are, but are you making it as fast as you need to? Are you operating as efficiently as you can?
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. How busy is your shop floor? How occupied is your team? Are your machine always running? Are you happy with your growth and operational efficiency? While you might be content with what you have right now, the question is, why would you not make more money if you could without increased efforts or resources? In today's episode, we have our guest, Paul Critchley from New England Lean Consulting, who discusses practical examples of how to apply 5S's of Lean to your organization. He also shares his insights into how the needs for Lean differ into high-volume organizations such as automobile from job shops. Finally, he shares some of the misconceptions around Lean and how applying Lean principles can help your organization grow faster. Let me introduce Paul to you. Paul Critchley is a recognized thought leader on an employee engagement and continuous improvement and has helped businesses around the world achieve greater level of success through the application of Lean techniques. A frequent speaker, he has keynoted at numerous corporate events as well as at international conventions such as AME's annual Lean conference and at OPEX Week. He's also the host of the New England Lean podcast, a weekly show that features management thought leaders, TED speakers, world-renowned authors, and university professors. Paul is also a regular writer and contributor to publications such as Industry Week and Quality magazines. Paul is a former board member of the Northeast region of AME, holds a BS in Mechanical Engineering, an MS degree in Management, and a MS in Organizational Leadership. He is a proud supporter of CT's Skill Up for Manufacturing program. He co-authored his first book, The Whole Professional, a collection of essays to help you achieve a full and satisfying life, to bring a fresh perspective on work-life balance and how individuals and organizations can work together to achieve greater levels of attainment. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sam. Good to be here. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. And we are super excited to listen to your insight. Just to kick things off, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus, Paul?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'll keep it brief. I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, went to work for a tier 1 automotive supplier. And shortly thereafter is really where I got introduced to Lean, which is no big surprise because back then, which was late 90s, Lean was just kind of getting a lot of traction, especially in the automotive industry. So I learned a lot about it from there, moved over. I worked in aerospace for a long, long time. Where I'm physically located is in just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And between Hartford and Springfield, Massachusetts, we're known as Aerospace Alley. We have a lot of very large aerospace manufacturers and their sub-tier suppliers along the I-91 corridor. So that's where I spent a lot of my career. Moved up through the chain, the chain of command, I guess if you want to call it that. Spent a long time as a manufacturing engineering manager, eventual plant and operations facilities manager. So had the honor to be able to practice Lean for a long, long time. And at a certain point, decided I wanted to go out on my own. So I did that in 2012. And I started my company, which is New England Lean Consulting. And that's exactly what we do basically all day, every day, is we help organizations practice Lean and teach and consult in that area.
Okay, so we want to discuss a lot of that. But before we do that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask all of our guests. and that is going to be your perspective on growth. What does business growth mean to you, Paul?
Well, so my background again is mostly manufacturing, so I'll answer it from that perspective.
Okay.
Growth is all about, I think, winning new business.
Okay.
There's always folks out there that can do it better, faster, cheaper. So the object of the game is to try to beat them to the punch. We say it to all of our clients. We all have competitors, and New England Lean does as well. And our competitors are all out there working hard to win your business away from you. And they're going to do that on cost, on delivery, on customer service, on lead time, all of the important KPIs. So the goal is to, again, beat them to the punch and be able to service your customers, because in lean speak, value is defined by the customer, and different customers would define it different ways. Some people just buy commodities, so they'll buy on price. Other people will buy on, customer service. So that's a big part of what lean does for you, is it allows you to grow your business in a methodical, logical way that's not haphazard. You kind of, to steal a Stephen Coveyism, you begin with the end in mind. So you kind of come up with your strategic plan, and then you come up with a plan, execute to the plan.
Okay, so when I'm doing my interview, I'm always trying to connect the dots. And here I'm trying to connect the dots with respect to lean and growth. So whenever I think about any buzzwords in the market, everybody is going to claim that they are super lean. Okay.
Yeah.
Just because it sounds cool. But obviously not everybody is. So two things. Number one, we have to connect the dots in terms of getting leaner and how to grow by being leaner. Can you touch on that?
Sure. So to answer your first question and connecting the dots, you're spot on, Sam. Unfortunately, so the term lean got coined in 1988.
Okay.
And it got popularized the next year when Dan Jones and Jim Womack wrote the book called The Machine That Changed the World.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the privilege of meeting Jim Womack and hearing him speak numerous times. And one of the things he said recently was, and I'll paraphrase because I don't want to put words into his mouth, but he basically said, looking back, I wish we'd never used the term lean, because, and this is something that we do in our workshops. One of the first questions I ask is, when I say the word lean, what do you guys think of? And probably 95 times out of 100, people will say, well, trim the fat, use fewer people. And it very quickly, because the term lean has that connotation. If you walk down the grocery store, cereal aisle, or everything's lean, this or all kinds of, and that's what it's all about, right? Getting smaller. And lean, in the terms of Toyota production system lean, it's not that at all. It's all about delivering value to the customer. And that customer can be an internal customer or an external customer. And so we focus on what is the value that you bring. And then we focus on taking the waste out of being able to deliver that value to the customer. And when I say waste, it could be transportation, motion, defects, all of the things that get in the way of you being able to deliver your product or service to your customer. So when we put it in those terms, people generally kind of come along. They're like, okay, now I understand that you guys aren't here, you consultants aren't here to take my work cell from 10 people to 6 and then fire or lay off those 4 people. Once we get over that hurdle, it gets a little bit easier. Now, as far as your second question on how to grow, that's literally what lean is truly all about. It's based on the Toyota product. And when Toyota developed that system, again, it was all about being able to deliver the customer what they wanted when they wanted it. So if you think about what the automotive industry looked like in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, if you look at the big 3, which here in America were Ford, GM, and Chrysler, we could pump out automobiles more than anybody. But we had that old mentality of set up the machine and just hit go and run it as fast as you can and just keep pushing product out. And I use the term pushing on purpose. Where Toyota differed was they said, that's great, Because we can do it better, because we'll make a Toyota Camry, then we'll do a Tacoma, and then we'll do a Corolla, and then we'll go back to a Camry, and we'll change the color every single time. Whereas the big three would be like, all right, today we're going to run F-150s, and they're all going to be silver. Tomorrow we'll change over to black, and the next day it'll be blue, but they're all going to be the same truck. It was that kind of different mentality. So they were able to grow. And now flash forward to today in 2021, and we can see what the automotive market has done. And again, it's all about being able to give the customer what they want. The old belief was, well, people will come into the car dealer lot and you pick from the lot and that's it. Well, what if I go to the lot and I don't like any of these? Well, I have to order it. Well, forget about being, you could. But you're talking 12, 16, 26 weeks sometimes way back then in order to order a car. We actually just did this with Toyota. We went to the lot, didn't find what we wanted. We ordered a minivan, a Sienna, the way we wanted it. 4 weeks later, we had it exactly the way we wanted it. So when I talk about lean and growth, sometimes people will believe that lean is a cost-cutting practice strategy. It's not the main goal. Now, by way of eliminating waste, reducing defects or eliminating defects, your throughput, your whip turns are going to improve. So you will eventually realize an increase in your plant capacity. Now, how you use that capacity, obviously, you're going to want to fill it up. One of the ways you could fill it up is, hey, now that we can get stuff through twice as fast, say, we can actually go to our customers and say, hey, this thing, this widget that we make for you, or this service that we provide you, our old lead time was 6 to 8 weeks. Well, now we're at 3 to 4 or 2 to 4 or whatever it is. Customers oftentimes will pay a premium for that because nobody wants to wait. I mean, think about Amazon now, right? Amazon Prime's wildly successful because you don't have to plan ahead. You don't have to think. You just click, click, click. Tomorrow, this thing shows up on your doorstep.
There is a term for that. It's called instant gratification, and it's very popular. All of us want instant gratification.
Right. Yeah. As a society, I mean, you think about it. You can just say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Siri, or whatever, and you're right. It's just, I want to know what's the weight of a blue whale? Well, it's whatever it is, 500 tons. I don't know. I'm making that part up. But you're right. Our society has driven us to the point where I want this right now. Why can't I have it? The closer we can all get to being able to provide things right now, the more business you're going to win. And that's the flywheel of, the momentum that you can get once you start practicing lean and instituting some of these ideas.
Okay, so let's talk about, and I'm again trying to connect the dots here, right? So obviously you have been doing this in 2 different industries, and those are one of the top industries, in my opinion, when it comes to practicing lean. So you have done a lot of work in the automotive space and also in the aerospace. So in these 2 spaces, and you also talk about how values differ for everyone, also for every industry. So talk about the manufacturing processes for the automobile as well as for the aerospace, how they differ and what kind of values they each care for.
Sure. So it's interesting that you asked that because they're very different, which is always funny. And I'm famous for saying process is a process is a process, right? If you're making stuff, you're making stuff. But when I think back to my time in automotive, it was very much high volume, low mix. And what I mean by that is I can remember walking out in the plant in South Carolina, where I used to be, and I made bearings. So we made the bearing content for automatic transmissions. And I can remember just looking out over this literally 1 million square feet of plant under roof and just centerless grinders. We probably had 50 of these things running 24/7, and the rollers, the needle rollers that came off of them were coming off so fast, it looked like a little stream of water. And it was it's almost like when you watch on television, some of these shows that how it's made or whatever, and they show you some of the inside, right, of how it's made. It was exactly like that. And it was just volume driven. Compared to aerospace is generally not very, it's not high volume kind of a thing. And a lot of our clients who are in aerospace, they'll make, 1 or 2 of whatever this thing is, and then they'll send it into the customer and they'll test this thing out. It might be a year or two before it ever comes back around. And the next time it comes around, it'll be 3 revisions different because that it's some internal thing that's gone on at the customer. So they have to be able to be ready and nimble and agile enough to be able to change that quickly and be able to continue to service the customer.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about lean practices in these 2 industries. So in the aerospace, obviously, when I think about this, it's going to be a completely different space where, you are sending the parts and they are coming after 3 years. So your raw material pricing is going to be tricky to manage there. And then you have to plan a lot more than you are doing, let's say, in the high volume shops, right? So if you were to practice lean in these 2 industries, how would you do it?
Sure. So I'll just say that the principles are all the same. The tools are all the same. How they get applied, I will say, is a little, I will admit that, we do it a little bit differently. Every client's going to be a little bit different. One of the rebuttals that we get sometimes is people say, especially in the aerospace, they're like, well, listen, we're kind of a job shop. We might make 1 or 2 or 3 of these things and we may never see them again, or it might be 3 or 4 years down the road versus this belief. And it's fairly accurate that in automotive, once you make something, you're pretty much making that thing for a while until, maybe there's a design change or something down the road, but those generally don't come, at least in my experience, all that often. So what I like to talk about when I'm dealing with, like, say, an aerospace client is say, okay, I understand you're high mix, low volume. So in other words, again, you might make 2 of these, 1 of those, 4 of these other things. And again, you might not ever see it again. But there's still principles within lean that you can apply that make things flow better. And I'll give you a quick example. 5S is a great place to start, although I will say you don't have to start there, but we generally do. So just if we quantify for a CEO or a CFO, did you realize that you have 10 people out on the shop floor running lathes and mills? And on average, each person spends about an hour every day looking for some tool that they need that they don't have right where they need it. And this tool is worth $5. But multiply that out. Every day you're losing an hour per person times how many people you have times 5 or 6 days a week. Look at all of the labor and how much do these guys make an hour, right? It's $20, $30. So it's real easy sometimes to get people's attention because they just don't realize it. If you walk out on a shop floor and you just see people being busy, they're moving, machines are running, their spindles are cutting chips. So the belief is that we're making money. Well, you are, but are you making it as fast as you need to? Are you operating as efficiently as you can? So when we do this kind of stuff in a high mix, low volume environment, we like to work on these types of things, what I call the support mechanisms. Making sure tools are where they need to be, having a good visual management system, instituting daily management to make sure lines of communication are going. It's real easy sometimes, again, in that environment, to not communicate something that somebody would need to know, and you get a couple days down the line, you're like, oops, I forgot to tell you, we got a new print, or we got in from the client, or we got another quote in. They don't want this revision, they want this other thing, or they asked us to split the order, or whatever it may be. It's real easy to make those kinds of mistakes. So we standardize and apply the lean tools and principles where we can without, straight up changing everything that they do. Because again, a lot of these places have been in business for a long, long time. So it's not like we have to, blow it up and change everything right now. And that's sometimes, I think, what people believe lean to be. It's like this whole extra thing. And it's really not. It's just about taking what you do best and allowing people in your organization to do those things more often and more hours in the day.
Okay, so you spoke about the 5S's, and I'm not familiar with that. So can you touch a little bit on that as well? Because my audience may not be familiar with that either.
So yes, sorry. I'll rattle these things off because I deal with it all day.
That's
so
why
I
I'm
sometimes
here.
forget. Sorry, Sam. So yeah, 5S it's a lean tool, and it's 5 words that start with S, and the English versions are sort, set in order, shine, standardize, sustain. And it's kind of a step-by-step method of kind of what I described.
Okay.
So I'll give you a real easy example. Sam, in your kitchen right now, do you have a silverware drawer?
I probably do. I never go to kitchen, so I'm not too sure about that. And
Well,
I am dangerous in the kitchen. Okay, you definitely don't want me to be near the kitchen drawer that carries knife. Okay.
All right, fair enough. So typically then, if usually people would, right? So you open up your silverware drawer, and I'll bet that pretty much everybody who's listening has a divider. So there's a section for forks, a section for knives, a section for spoons,
Yeah.
right? And everything in there is clean and ready to go. So if, right, you grab your yogurt for breakfast, you go to the silverware drawer, you need a spoon, you get a spoon. That's basically the first 3S's right there. Because, for instance, in our silverware drawer, we're a family of 4. We probably have 8 forks, 8 knives, 8 spoons, right? So we don't have 50 of everything. So we don't have too much, and we don't have too little. We don't have 1 spoon to share for 4 people. That's part of what sort is. You get rid of the stuff that you don't need, and you can also sort in the things that you do need. Now, the second S is set in order. That's just like I described, where it's divided up. Now, another question I ask in workshops is, who has a junk drawer in their kitchen? Yeah. And the vast majority of people will throw their hands up. And it's, all right, what's in your junk drawer? It's everything. It's old batteries, pair of scissors, extra Christmas cards from last year. It's junk. That's all right. How long, if you need something in the junk drawer, how long does it take you to find it? And, it's not horrible. It's not hours, but it's not as easy as it is in the silverware drawer. That's what set in order is. It just means everything in its place, right?
Yeah.
Shine is, it's clean, it's operable, it's ready to go. And in this example, again, you go to the silverware drawer, it's all clean. You don't put dirty dishes back, right? That's A, disgusting, and B, would defeat the whole purpose. In industry, it's all about, it's like gauges, tools, fixtures. Are they where they need to be? Are they where I need them? And when I go to the rack or the shelf or the tool bench to get what I need, it's going to be there. I know it's ready to go. It's not going to be broken. It's not going to be out for calibration or any of that kind of stuff. It's ready. So those are the first 3. Standardize is just like it sounds. So from work cell to work cell, you try to make things as standard, quite frankly, as the same as you can. Because one of the other tenets of Lean is you want a well-trained cross-functional workforce. So if Sam, you and I are working in 2 separate work cells, and I'm out one day, but they need you to cover for me, they want you to be able to come into my workspace and be able to tell what's what. Not, it's one of those instances where sometimes I'll hear from clients, well, it's okay because I know where everything is, and this is my space. It's like, okay, it is your space, but only for now. What if you hit the lottery tomorrow? Or what if you're out sick? Or there's got to be a way that other people can come in, get a lay of the land quickly and easily. That's what standardization is. Now, one Paul Critchley caveat to that is, I don't prescribe to the notion that standardization means emergency room clean, hospital room kind of stuff. Sometimes I think people will misconstrue standardization to mean it absolutely 100% has to look exactly the same, which means like in Lean Office, sometimes people will struggle with this. They'll say, well, you can't have pictures of your kids on the desk, or I can't have my plant anymore, or I can't have my jacket on the back of my chair because 5S or the Lean consultant said you can't. That's not what this means at all. It just means if somebody needs to use your area or come into right and find what they need to find, they have to be able to do it quickly and efficiently. That's all that means. The last one is sustain. And again, it's just like it sounds. Sometimes we'll fall into, not we, New England Lean, but sometimes as a community of manufacturers, we get into this habit of spring cleaning. So though, especially here in the Northeast of the United States, it's wintertime, and so spring comes and we want to kind of air things out, and we'll just clean things out, and then we'll spend the rest of the year recluttering everything. So we have to do it again next year. Sustainment's all about keeping up with it along the way, so you don't have to have those massive, kind of events once a year, or once every couple of years. So you never get to that point where you get so overwhelmed. It's one of those things you just kind of keep up with along the way. So that in a nutshell is a tour of what 5S is.
Okay, interesting. So as you mentioned, I mean, and I mentioned that I'm not really interested in kitchen and I'm not qualified to be in the kitchen, right? So what I want you to do now is to touch on a couple of stories where the companies that you work with, they were not in order, they were not sorted, they were not shining, they were not standardized, or they were not sustained. So just pick a couple of stories where you found that they were not following the 5S's.
Sure. Unfortunately, that's pretty easy.
Okay.
Because it is something that people struggle with. So we had a client who specifically called us in for some help with 5S. They had two of their biggest customers in for supplier audits, and independently, each client had told them, you guys really got to kind of clean this place up because you're literally busting at the seams with stuff. You just have a lot of stuff, and we want to give you more business, but we're afraid if we do, you're not going to be able to keep things straight because it's just, when we walk around, it's just racks and shelves and everything's chock full of just stuff. So they called us and hired us to come in and help. And the short version is they basically had 30 years of accumulation of, so a couple examples. They'd have a bill of materials that has 30 things on it. Well, a couple of those things would be ordered incorrectly. So they would come in. It may or may not be something that you could return. So, because in some cases, this is pretty large equipment. So they would make the decision, we'll keep it and we'll use it on the next job. Well, they didn't have a mechanism to track it. So the next job and jobs that came down the pike, the engineers who were speccing out that job didn't know that those items were available for speccing in. So they would just kind of sit out on the floor. And that multiplied, again, literally over 30 years. Sometimes they were big, sometimes they were small pieces. So what they ended up doing was they would just stick things on a shelf. And again, they would say, well, it's still, air quotes, it's a good part. It's not scrap. It's not inoperable. It just wasn't the right part or piece for this particular thing, but we can still use it. And again, so they'd save it for tomorrow. Tomorrow never came until the point where they were just overwhelmed with inventory. So that was a big part of what we had to help them with. And if I'm honest with you, they finally admitted to me that they actually had a warehouse that they started renting to store all this same kind of a stuff.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, all right, so you're keeping all this inventory that you don't need and you're paying rent to be able to do it. And they said, yeah, that's what we're doing. I said, okay, well, so we sorted, we had a huge sorting. Yeah, right. So we had a huge sorting event, probably filled 2 or 3 8-yard dumpsters with just this stuff that was literally 20 some odd years old, because it was, even though it was still good, it didn't have a purpose. And I always like to say things have to earn the right to take up floor space in your shop. And in order to do that, it has to help you produce product that earns you money. So people, machines, equipment, right? All of these things take up space, and they have to be able to help move your company towards delivering value to your customer. Dead inventory does not help you do that. And in fact, it hinders you, because just like these clients told our client, we want to give you more business, but we're not going to until you get this place cleaned up. And oh, by the way, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look clean. It doesn't look managed. It just looks like your basement or your garage. Yeah. It's like, everybody's favorite place on a shop floor is right here for now. That's where everything goes. And it's like, well, right here for now turns into right here until somebody else needs that space for something. This will get shoved over to a corner or somewhere. Somebody will come looking for it, can't find it. Maybe they go looking for it. Maybe they go buy another one. I used to work at a company who had 3 Christmas trees that because they kept forgetting that they owned one, and every year they just go buy another one. So finally, I'm like, boy. yeah, you can't make this stuff up, Sam. So finally, I go up on this mezzanine, and I'm like, why did we buy another Christmas tree? We already had 2. They're like, oh, we did? Yeah, we did. So.
Oh boy, so much fun. All right, Paul, I think that's it for today. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts by any chance?
Yeah, because again, I've been doing this for a long time, so I won't say that I've heard it all, but I've heard a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, getting back to what we started the conversation with is, lean's not just for automotive. It's not just for high volume. We have clients, we have a public school, we have a major university, we have hospitals, medical offices, and yes, we have manufacturers too. So again, you can apply lean tools and principles to any industry, and you don't even have to make anything. You could be a service organization, because again, it all gets back to delivering value to your customers. Whether maybe you work at a bank and you do mortgages. Well, how long does it take to get the paperwork through for that? Well, why does it take that long? We've actually value stream mapped this before. Over 90% of the time was this paperwork that was floating around this office was sitting in people's inboxes waiting. That offers no value. In the meantime, you have customers waiting for this stuff to get done. So how much is it worth to the business to be able to take that lead time and cut it in half tomorrow? What would that look? So I just want to encourage everybody to give it a chance. I also hear a lot that people are like, we tried it and it didn't work. Yeah, but what did you do? How did you do it? Did you have a coach, or did you just cut inventory? I mean, that was a huge problem in the our late 80s, early 90s, where people glommed onto the just-in-time model. And they said, oh, yeah, I definitely want to do that. So they cut inventory by half or 3/4. And pretty soon customers are calling and yelling at them like, where's my stuff? You're late. They didn't do the 5S. They didn't do the setup reduction and all that stuff first. They weren't supported yet in order to be able to cut inventory, which you can do, but you got to do some other stuff first. So I just encourage everybody just to give it a try. What's the worst thing that can happen? I feel like sometimes people think that lean, again, is this whole big extra thing. And if the timing's not perfect, I don't want to start because I don't want to mess it up. Lean is exactly opposite of that. It's all about just trying it. Talk to the people on the floor, the people who do the work. They know the best. They are the experts. It's up to us, leaders, CEOs, lean practitioners, to ask the right questions. And the biggest one is, why do you do it that way? And if you get the answer, well, that's the way I've always done it, that's a big clue that there's something there, that there's some waste in there that you could probably ferret out.
Right. So my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be 5S's can be not only applied to different industries, they can also be applied to life as well. And in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my life in order. I'm going to be sorting it more. I'm going to make sure that it's shining, it's standardized, and it's sustainable as well. On that note, Paul, I thank you for your time. This has been a fun conversation.
Sam, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I had a blast.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Paul Critchley or New England Lean Consulting, head over to newenglandleanconsulting.com. It's newenglandleanconsulting.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Ian Pratt, who discusses how to distinguish between the need for additional resources and operational bottlenecks that need to be optimized before investing further. Also, the interview with Max Krug, who discusses what actions businesses need to take if they encounter product quality or business performance issues. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.